Hi, so this is the grade 10 extended lesson for today. So first thing is, this question was taken from the assess prep task from yesterday. So you need to go and make sure you do the 2 November assess prep tasks, November 25, get them done. This was the biggest question that came up in terms of people either got it wrong or left it blank. The reason I want to bring it up today is because it comes up time and time again. When you see the word hence, that means you can use the information in the previous question. So even if you got this question wrong, you can still answer this question here. They like to always give you show that question, so show me that this is the answer, because then if you can't, at least you can still use that answer in the next question. Okay, so the first question was the sine rule, the cosine rule, but that's not what I'm looking at today. This is what I want to look at for the do now. So hence, calculate the area of one leaf. So it wants to calculate the area of the triangle and the semicircle at the bottom, and it's as simple as that. Okay, on the formula page, there's two formulas you can use for the triangle, but I'm just going to use a half base times height. And the semicircle is pi r squared, and then you just divide it by 2. Okay, so if we go and look at the actual picture, okay, if I try and fill this in, the triangle, the base is 20. The height, I don't actually know, okay, so I need to work this out. Okay, so I'm going to leave a little space for that. Then the semicircle is pi r. Well, if they've gave me the diameter, that means that the radius is 10. So 10 squared, and then divided by 2. So the only thing I have to work out for the formulas now is the height. So if you go back to the triangle, you should be able to clearly see the height of the triangle goes straight through the shape. Okay, it makes a right angle triangle. Oh, that was a good one. Okay, right angle triangle. We know in this right angle triangle that the angle here is 65. How do you know that? It told you it in the question before. The hypotenuse is 33.1, and I'm trying to work out the height of this triangle so I can put it in the formula over here. Okay, so now you're going to be using SOHCAHTOA. So silly old horses can't always hear the other animals. This is also in the formula booklet. So H is my opposite in this question, and this is my hypotenuse. So I'm going to be using the first one. Okay, so I like to use triangles, as you know. So the opposite, which is at the top, is H. The hypotenuse, which is at the bottom, is 33.1. And then the angle we are given is sine 65. So to work out what the top is, you have to just multiply them together. So sine 65 times by 33.1, and that gets you 29.998. So because it's 2 decimals, I'm going to round that to 30. So now I can put that in the formula that we had at the beginning, and then we just put that in the calculator. So a half times 20 times 30, if you want to split it up, that's fine. That's 300. And then pi times 10 squared divided by 2 is 157.08. And then we just add them together. So your answer for this question is 475.08. Just check the units, millimeters squared. Okay, so that was in the assess prep task, and it was to show you that you just use the information from above when you're answering. Right, then in the lesson, we went on to do a little bit more trig. So we have 2 students in the class, so we have extended and we have standard. So what I've done is I've took the same question from both papers, and if the question changes, I'm going to show you. Okay, so this question's talking about a snow cone. So the sphere at the top is the ice, and then the cone at the bottom, you can obviously see there. Okay, first question. This was the same on both papers. It wants us to work out what R is. Okay, I am going to do it from a standard point of view. Okay, and then I'll explain the extended after. So because you have to show what R is, if you go over to the sphere, you can see you have an isosceles triangle. So I can split that into two perfect right angled triangles. Okay, and if I do this over here, the bottom is going to be half of 5.4, so that's 2.7 here. This is the radius, and then the angle at the top is 75 because you just half 150. Okay, I'm looking for R, so this is the hypotenuse. The angle that we were given was 75 degrees, so this is the opposite. So in SOHCAHTOA, silly old horses can't always hear their other animals. We are again going to be using that first one. So my triangle is going to look like this. So sine 75. I'm looking for the hypotenuse, but I have the opposite. So I need to divide in this question. So 2.7 divided by sine 75, and the answer you get is 2.795. So three significant figures is 2.80. If you're looking at this from an extended point of view, you could have also used the sine rule. Okay, so because it's an isosceles triangle, this angle's 15 degrees, this angle's 15 degrees. Okay, so that means R sine 15 is the same, and they're a pair, 5.4 over sine 150. Okay, and then you just need to bring sine 15 to the other side and you'll get the same answer. So the next part of this question is where it gets a little bit different now. So if you look, the extended paper changes, but the standard paper, they both change. The standard paper is a little bit easier than the extended. Okay, so if you look now, it says that the ice is melted and it's gone into the cone. So this is now water. Okay, and in extended, it doesn't give you the radius, but in the standard, it gives you the diameter. The first thing I need to do is I need to work out, well, what is the volume of that water? And this is the same for both questions. Well, we know that the sphere, the radius is 2.8. In your formula booklet, the volume of a sphere is 4 over 3 pi r cubed. So all I need to do then is put 2.8 in for the radius. So, sugar. So 4 over 3 times by pi times by 2.8 cubed. And our answer is 91.95. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the standard one, but it's still the same for both. So if the volume of the water is the same as the cone, is the sphere, what is the volume of the cone? So the volume of a cone in the formula page again is 1/3 pi r squared h. Okay, so if I go to the standard side, I know the radius is going to be 5.72 divided by 2 is 2.86. Okay, so I know 1/3 pi 2.86 squared times h is 91.95 because the volume has to be the same as the sphere. So then I can just divide 91.95 by 1/3 pi 2.86 squared, and that will get me what h is. So 91.95 divided by 1/3 pi 2.86 squared. You can put the bottom in separately if you want and then just do 91.95 divided by your answer. But you should get 10.25 and it is centimetres. So that's the height of the cone for standard. For extended, we're going to do the same. However, for the radius, it's a little bit different because we don't actually know what that is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a right angled triangle and write R in terms of H. So this is 15. This is H, isn't it? Over here. This is 15, okay? So this is the opposite and this is the adjacent. So I'm going to write it in terms of tan, okay? So we know the opposite equals tan 15 times by the adjacent. But instead of O, this is the radius. And instead of the adjacent, we're going to call it the height. So we can write that as h tan 15. That's what we're going to put into this formula here for the extended paper. Okay, so I'm going to change the colour so you can see what I'm doing. So a third pi, the radius is h tan 15. And then the h we are trying to find, and that equals 91.95. Okay, oh, sorry, that's squared, isn't it? Radius squared. Okay, so what does that radius squared mean? I can write that as h squared times by tan 15 squared. Let's get that first bracket. And then times by h. So to simplify this a little bit, the h squared and the h come together. That makes h cubed. Okay, and then the rest of it, I can just divide 91.95 by it. So a third pi tan 15 squared. Once you put that in the calculator, you are left with, let's get it up, what do we get? 91.95 divided by a third pi times tan. So I'm putting this in the bracket. Tan 15 squared. And that equals 1, 2, 2, 2. And then you have to cube root. So h, cube root answer. Oh no, sorry, that went. Shift cube root answer is 10.69. Okay, right, what you've got to do for today's lesson then is go to Google Classroom. There is an assignment. If you're extended or standard, there's 2 different links and you're just going to practice some trig for today.